Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. And for our first session in the afternoon, and the final session of National Seminar on Diagnosis, we have Padma Shri Professor, Distinguished Professor Ram Singh, delivering on the topic Diagnosis Technique in Ayurveda System of Medicine. So, before we begin, let me introduce him briefly. Is that okay, sir? Okay. For general audience, Professor Ram Singh is a lifetime distinguished professor in Faculty of Ayurveda at Banaras Hindu University. He has played a commendable role in revival and development of Ayurveda and its scientific validation, which has accelerated the process of its mainstreaming in India and its globalization. His work has helped setting trends in contemporary Ayurveda. He was born in 1942, graduated in Ayurveda in 1961, PhD in 1969, DLit in 1982. He's Fellow of National Academy of Indian Medicine and is a jewel member of All India Ayurveda Academy. Professor Singh has produced over 80 MDs and 40 PhD scholars excuse me, under his guidance, many of whom are holding top positions in the country, and he has published more than 20 books, 200 research papers in national and international journals. He is on the editorial board of several national and international journals. Professor Singh has also joined Faculty of Ayurveda at BHU in 1964, served the institution for 40 years in the capacity of professor, head of department, dean of the faculty, till 2003, after which he joined the Rajasthan Ayurveda University of Jodhpur as its first and founder vice-chancellor from 2003 to 2006, where he played a commendable role to establish a new role model institution of higher learning in Ayurveda. Professor Singh is the member of National Commission on History of Science, INSA. He is a recipient of the prestigious Trigun Award and Ram Narayan Sharma National Research Award 2005 by His Excellency the President of India, Hari Om Ashram Award, Aistam Award in 2005 of Asian Medicine, Lifetime Achievement of Awards of AIMS and Kasturba Oration Award, Platinum Jubilee Oration Award of Indian Science Congress in 2002, and Distinguished Alumnus Award of Banaras Hindu University in 2008. Professor Singh has been honored by the President of India with prestigious civilian award Padma Shri in 2016, and he has widely traveled all over the world to promote Ayurveda globally. Professor Singh has been the chair professor at Wangang Digital University, Republic of Korea, and a visiting professor at Mount Madonna Institute of Creative Science and Arts, USA. He has been working as emeritus professor and now is the lifetime distinguished professor at BHU. He is adjunct professor at Central University of Tibetan Studies at Sarnath. He is designated as Ayurveda Guru by RAV under the Ministry of Ayush, Government of India, and has been the chairman of the Scientific Advisory Board 2012 to 2015 of CCRAS. He has been the chairman of Ayush Sector Innovation Council constituted by Government of India. Professor Singh is an extremely popular Ayurvedic physician practicing Ayurvedic medicine on classical lines with scientific timbre. He is a successful and extremely popular teacher and a researcher in his field of specialization and has produced several textbooks and contributed chapters in over a dozen important books published in India and abroad. He has been seriously engaged in the revival and development of Ayurveda on scientific lines as an evidence-based system of medicine and has extended commendable help at national level in educational reform in Ayush sector. The research interest of the professor has been the chronic disease management, geriatric healthcare, including mental health, with attempts to evaluate the safety and efficacy of Ayurvedic drugs, therapies, especially Rasayan therapy, through his teachings, deliberations in innumerable national and international forums and publications. Professor Singh has extended commendable help in bridging the gap between traditional and conventional system of medicine, promoting medical pluralism and its mainstreaming. Not only this, especially with the Soarikpa or the Tibetan medicine, he has been a panel member of experts to study the status, strength, and association of Tibetan system of medicine in the year 2008. May I request it now Professor Singh to deliver his talk. Thank you so much.
Can you hear me? Everybody can hear me? Okay. In spite of all that introduction, which is most important that I am an adjunct professor in this institute also for last few years, although I have not contributed much here in the academics, and I will love to do that. The topic advised for me to give this evening, so diagnosis is changing fast in different directions. Time in Ayush system is present thing in a contemporary perspective. Is Ayush in contemporary perspective. And what actually is needed? What is the possible direction where we should move now? Because what we have been doing for the last 100 years may not be absolutely necessary or very useful today. Probably some change is needed, and we cannot ignore change. Progress is always based on change, so we should not be afraid of a change. Although I will not talk about change, but I want to prepare you to feel that change is absolutely necessary to make a progress. Now, what is the main issue when we talk of diagnosis? In the medical service, in any discipline, whether it is modern medicine or Ayush, there are certain issues, and issues are to be addressed before we really proceed to the action to be taken. I have written a few lines which you can read from a distance if it is visible to you. Otherwise, I read for you. With the changing concepts of health and disease beyond the scope of one single system of medicine, now medical pluralism is fast becoming an essential need of the medical profession. No one single system of medicine is now capable of taking help or taking care of all the diseases which are prevalent now. And therefore, medical pluralism, multiple systems are needed today to help. Now, once we are thinking of medical pluralism, this warrants a transdisciplinary approach in practice of medicine, utilizing the best of all systems, bridging the gap without losing the basic nature of Ayurveda. I should emphasize this. We are ready to change, but we are not ready to lose the basic tenets of our own systems, because our systems have something very, very important feature which has to be retained, and modern medicine, if they want to collaborate, they have to bend towards us. It is not always necessary that we bend to them, they should also bend. This is what I feel always. Now, I always emphasize that there is a need of Ayurvedic approach in research and diagnosis. Now, people ask me, what do you mean by Ayurvedic approach? How Ayurvedic approach is different than other approaches. After all, the patient whom we deal, whether I deal as an Ayurvedic physician or you deal as a Saurikpa physician or allopathic doctor, whole thing is happening around one life process. Disease is common, human being is common, but still there are certain very special features that we should stick to it. And what are the basic approach? Why we are looking for Ayurvedic approach? What is Ayurvedic approach? My view is that using methodology based on ontological distinctions of Ayurveda, aiming to test Ayurveda as it is. We want to test Ayurveda as it is. We can use anything. We can use science. We can use technology. I am using technology to project these slides. Technology cannot be denied. Science cannot be denied. But ontological distinctions between modern science and today's science are different, absolutely different, and that we have to be cautious. Other thing which I want to emphasize is aiming at validating and strengthening Ayurveda as independent system of science and healthcare. Independent, I am saying. There are people in our society, particularly in India, they want to merge everything in one, and allopathy wants to engulf us, which should not be allowed. No system should engulf other system. So there's a need that whole thing helps to grow our science as an independent health science. We can take help of science and technology. They are making benefits of research outcomes legally, socially, professionally usable by Ayurvedic practitioners. A lot of research is being done on Ayurveda, maybe on your system also, which is not used or is not in favor of the practice of your people. Many researchers yield many therapies which are limited for the use of allopaths, and that is not very fair. We want that the outcomes legally, socially, professionally usable by Ayurvedic practitioners. We want to use our things, even if you develop in a different angle. Their research outcomes findings placed curriculum and syllabi, UG and PG courses. Last 60 years, Ayurveda is doing a lot of research. All systems are doing some research. But when we go in the classroom to teach, we never teach those things which we claim that it is a research. There's a need that whatever you discover, you find, that has to come in the teaching schedule so that the students also are benefited by new ideas, new outcomes. And that is not happening. I teach Ayurveda for a long time, for 60 years I am teaching, even now I teach. But we never teach what research has yielded. We only teach the same old things without any modification, and research has not contributed anything to education. This is a great crisis in Ayurveda at least. And then there is a need of quality of Ayush drug industry and services. All that we are doing new thing, anything new that we are doing, research or development, that must uplift Ayush drug sector and also the services. That has also not happened much. What are the basic difficulties? Before I come to the real core of Ayurvedic diagnostics, what are the difficulties? Now, problems are Ayurveda provides only subjective and functional indices which may be rated with suitable rating scales. All the methodology that described in Ayurveda is very subjective and functional. They are not so much objective. And many people feel that probably Ayurveda has principles, Ayurveda has ideas, has principles, approaches, everything, but no real working methodology to work on it. I don't agree with that. There are methods, but the methods are to be adopted, appropriated, so that we gradually develop a new appropriate technology of research in Ayurveda. And one thing which I usually love to do is to develop rating scales of all the subjective symptoms and signs described in Ayurveda, so that you can quantitate. Now, today's mind of the people look for measurement. They want to measure everything. Now, if we say that we cannot measure, although Ayurveda does not insist on measuring, Ayurveda is not a science of measurement. Ayurveda is a qualitative science, but people's mindset is that you measure your things. If Vata is increasing the body, how do you measure it? If Pitta is increasing, how do you measure it? And this can be done by using rating scales. Symptoms are described there, beautifully described in details, and we can make a rating scales, and that can help us to measure it. The entire practice of modern psychiatry is based on rating scales. They don't have any objective parameters. Still they diagnose this patient is schizophrenic, he is manic depressive psychosis. How do they do? There are no methods, there is no biology, there is no marker, but they rate the symptoms. If this is a bunch of symptoms, this is schizophrenic. If this kind of bunch is there, it is manic depressive psychosis. Like this is what they do. Why can we not do? Why can we not rate the symptoms of a person of Ojakshaya? Can we not do it? We can do it. And this is very important. Later, if we are friendly to the scientific mind people, biomedical scientists, gradually we can develop some biomarkers, biological markers, which can really rate these things. Although that will not be so easy, unless my mind and the mind of a biomedical scientist is on one tune, probably biomarkers cannot be developed. And that is a difficult job. This is what I have written here. I have already said what I wanted to say in this slide. Challenging task. Challenging task is to develop biomarkers, pathways, indicators, tools. These are the things which are needed for measuring. And this is not so easy. This I cannot do. Probably you also cannot do. I don't say everybody, but at least for me. This needs an intense interface between our science and their science. Their means the Occidental science. To identify the quality principles, to identify and to identify and quantify principal biofactors conceived in Ayurveda, for example, Tridosh, Vat, Pitta, Kapha, Agni, Am, Ojas, Prakriti, Vikriti, Nadi, all these are described. But if it is possible to make it more smart system, probably we need help of the people. There is no harm in taking help. Entire modern medicine, so-called modern medicine, allopathic medicine, has grown so much, not because of the activities of doctors and surgeons. They have not done anything. Surgeons or physicians have not contributed to medicine at all. They are not good scientists. Entire knowledge have come from physics, chemistry, biology, statistics. So why should we not take help of basic scientists? Why we are still running behind the allopathic doctors? Because they are not good scientists and they cannot help you. They only can criticize you. And therefore there is need that we take help of basic science to develop methodology for us. Now a point this I want to emphasize, because many of us are practitioners. I believe many of you must have heard about Udupa Committee. Dr. K.N. Udupa was the founder director of Institute of Medical Sciences at BHU. He was my teacher. I did my PhD under him. And he was, in his chairmanship, there was a committee appointed by Government of India in 1958-59. And the committee went through the country, talked to many practitioners, industry people, and they discovered that there are 4 kinds of practices are prevalent in India. It is more in context of Ayurveda, may not be in context of Sauripa. But problems are the same. Your problem, Ayurvedic problem, they are the same. There are many people who are practicing Ayurvedic diagnosis and Ayurvedic treatment. They make Ayurvedic diagnosis, give Ayurvedic treatment, and this is their practice. There are many others who are doing modern diagnosis and Ayurvedic treatment. It's very prevalent now. Many of the practitioners, particularly in Ayurveda, Unani, Siddha, homeopathy, diagnosis is done by modern methods. Treatment is your treatment. Large number of people were doing in 59, they are doing even now. The third category was Ayurvedic diagnosis and modern treatment. Ayurvedic diagnosis, modern treatment. Well, this is very interesting. Dr. Rupa used to say, he was my teacher, that if you do this, make diagnosis on Ayurvedic line, give modern treatment, and this will help you to understand the modern pharmacology, Ayurvedic pharmacology of modern drugs. You understand what I'm trying to? If the diagnosis is Ayurvedic, treatment is modern, in due course of time you will find that you know how the modern drugs are working in terms of Ayurvedic principles. This was an important thing that he noticed. And then he noticed that there were a large number of people, even in 59, who did modern diagnosis, modern treatment. They had degrees in Ayurveda, practicing modern medicine, diagnosis and treatment both. So such were the four kinds of people in 59 when Udupa committee submitted the report, and the same thing is prevailing even now. This is necessary to know what is happening in the field. Now coming to framing the protocols for diagnosis or research, there are certain basic anomalies that we follow. Everywhere, wherever you go in any Ayurvedic institution, you'll find difficulties. Generally, Ayurveda is not taken into full and real consideration while framing the protocol. When we make a protocol, Ayurveda is not taken in reality, and framework is made more to satisfy the modern evaluators. Often Ayurveda is molded to suit the modern tools, while it should be other way around. Usually what happened, that there is a counterpart modern physician, he dictates the Ayurvedic people to make this protocol like this, and then we collaborate with you. They want us to mold it to suit their methodology. This is not right, according to me. More adopting Ayurvedic terms, many protocols I have seen, even in Banaras University in some departments, they use Ayurvedic terms, Ayurvedic words, not the ideas. And that again is not helping in a real way. And then there is a lack of spirit of holistic team. Unless there is a team, now it is believed, not only now, in ancient days also, no single person was actually successful in treating a patient or doing research. There has to be holistic team of people. This is why, while Charak begins to talk of a team, he talks of Bishak Dabhyani Upasthata Rogi Pada Chatusrayam. Bishak means physician, the drug man, then nurse, and the patient himself. This was the team. The patient himself was a part of the team which was managing the patient. This was the approach. Now what is happening in current times, in modern medicine particularly, the patient is kept at a distance. There's a big thick curtain between the doctors and the patient. Patient does not know what is being done with me in the hospital. And then lack of training. Training is very important. Only doing a BMS degree is not enough. You cannot do research or diagnosis or practice simply by having a degree of BMS. You are to be retrained, retrained. I give you the example. Professor Udupa himself was an Ayurvedic doctor. He did his graduation in Ayurvedic medicine from BHU. At the end of the course, he thought that I cannot be a good practitioner only by this training. And then he went to Bombay in KEM hospital, did 2 years more internship. And then he went to abroad, he went to America to learn more. And then he thought that I can do something. So there's a need of training, retraining and training for the job that you are going to do. And lack of institutional support and recognition in most of our institutions in India, the institutional support is very poor. I belong to BHU, which is one of the best institutions of Ayurveda. I always feel that this could be best at rating by the government, but it's a very poor institution. We need much more support, much better infrastructure, much more support, financial also, particularly from public funds. And all these are the problems which are not allowing us to flourish faster. Now Government of India has a separate Ministry of Ayush. I should not speak against the government. I work in a governmental institution. But only creating a ministry separate than Ministry of Health is not going to help. I have been there in their new ministry, the same building, same chairs, same officers, only the board has changed. The budgets had changed in a very small tune, very small budget has raised. And the present government, although the Prime Minister is very favorable, he announced a national Ayush mission. They have a separate fund for this, and the fund is to raise more new institutions. I was talking to our dean a few minutes earlier that this is a good institution. I usually come here, this is a beautiful institution, small, beautiful. BHU is a big and beautiful, but this is a small and beautiful institution where there is a big scope of doing quality work. Quality work can be done in small institutions. They are running courses in Sauripa, graduation course, but they don't have a hospital. You have a dispensary, you have a pharmacy, but you don't have a hospital. Thinking of such an institution without a hospital is beyond my imagination. They should have a hospital, maybe small, maybe 50-bedded hospital or something like this. And there's a need of pursuing this. Dean and maybe our Vice Chancellor should try hard to take help of Ayush to share a fund from National Ayush Mission to have a small hospital. Not big, don't make big hospitals. Big hospitals have no scope. But this will be very, very important, and that I hope will be done. Now, some unique holistic biofactors essential for Ayurvedic diagnosis. There are certain things, I'm not going to tell you that whatever Charak writes you do everything, but there are certain which are very, very important things which are to be done in every protocol. Every patient has to be examined for that. And these 4 things are important according to my understanding. Others may vary also. Number 1, Agni and Ama. We have a very strong concept of Agni. Our body has a strong biofire system which is responsible for entire digestion and metabolism. Not only the gross metabolism, going up to the metabolism, the brain also, and heart also. And I call it metabolic strength. Every individual has a metabolic strength, and that strength should be assessed. Every protocol, every history writing should mention Agni and Am. What is the status of Agni and Am, so that you know the metabolic strength. Then Ojas and Ojabal. I'll come to this later. Ojas is a very important concept in Ayurveda. I don't know here or not later. Ojas is a very important component. When the dhatus are formed, 7 dhatus, Rasha, Rakta, Mansa, Medha, Asti, Majja, Shukra, at the apex of all 7 dhatus, there is a quintessence of all dhatus, which is the strength of the whole body, that is called Ojas. Ojas is not a philosophy. Ojas is a biological material, which may not have a parallel modern correlate. So you cannot describe it in a modern way. But this is something which is very, very important. And this Ojas is responsible for Ojabal, your strength or your biological strength. And according to Ayurveda, biological strength includes immune strength, your immunity. But our Ojabal is not only immunity, it's much more than that. So I call it immune strength. Then integrity of Srota system. Ayurveda says that our body is made of channels and channels. Sroto mayam hi sariram. This is what Charak says. Sroto mayam hi sariram. This body is nothing but channels and channels. Every cell of the body is a channel, is a srotas. Because cell membrane has pores through which something can enter, something can come out. And therefore, this is the kind of inner transport system that our body has. And this inner transport system has to be integral. The integrity of this integral system, the inner transport system has to be maintained by treatment or by lifestyle or whatever you can do. This has to be brought into the protocol of any history taking or examination. And then it is absolutely necessary to know the dosha prakriti, human constitution. In every patient has his own prakriti. Everybody, Unani has also prakriti, Siddha has also prakriti, Ayurveda has also prakriti, and Sauripa has also prakriti. First thing to be done in a patient know what is the Prakriti. Prakriti means, Prakriti is what? Prakriti is the Pratamakriti. Is the original makeup of the individual. How the individual was made by the nature. When he was born, what way he was made. Many people say genetic makeup of the individual. That is very important to be known. And we measure it in terms of Vata, Pitta and Kapha. Predominance of these three doshas. So these are the four things which are very, very important to examine every patient. Without this, it cannot be an Ayurvedic diagnosis. Ayurvedic diagnosis should have all these things which are needed to be that. Minimum Ayurvedic protocol, I have seen protocols for diagnosis made in Ayurvedic colleges up to the tune of 100 pages. I was recently visiting an institution. They showed me a protocol for making a diagnosis, history, writing and all that, 50 pages. And they said we had one of 100 pages, then we reduced to 50 pages. I will be of the view that let it be 3 pages protocol, not more than 5 pages, so that anybody who is handling the patient, he can handle the protocol, not that you make a bunch of whole textbook bringing into the history sheet. This is very, very important. So what is most important in this protocol? Identify the Prakriti. Prakriti has to be beyond ambiguity. Unfortunately, our training is so poor. If I give a client to him and him, all three may give 3 diagnoses. And why it is happening? Because our students are not trained properly. They need a proper training. And they mix up things. Prakriti is determined on stable factors. My hairs are white doesn't mean I'm a person of Pitta Prakriti. This is effect of aging. Effect of disease also sometimes we mix up. Somebody has some anxiety, that is his disease, his Vikriti, not Prakriti. So eliminate the Prakriti, eliminate the effect of disease, eliminate the effect of aging, and what remains behind, which is stable, does not change lifetime, is the factor to be used in Prakriti determination. For example, I give you an example. I always say that the eyes of the Kapha Prakriti person is big eyes. They have big eyes. Now, if anybody is born with big eyes don't shrink in aging. He has still a big eyes man. Or somebody who has a wide chest, Vishal, Charak says, Vishal Vaksha. His Vaksha is Vishal. If he is like this, he will not be like this. He will remain like this. So choose such things which are not changed frequently and take decision on that. Then only you will be able to really do the Prakriti. And then regarding characteristics of Nadi. Nadi is very, very important item of examination in Ayurveda. Although classical Ayurveda does not describe Nadi. The entire description of Nadi comes in Yogaratnakar in a medieval period text. Before that it was not there. I don't know why it was there, it was there in some form. But Nadi is one of the 8 methods of examining a patient. Nadi, Mutram, Balam, Jiva, Shabdastvargati. These 8. So Nadi, we must see Nadi. If you are an Ayurvedic physician, patient comes to you, you talk to him and write medicine without looking to the Nadi, then the patient feels that this man is not an Ayurvedic physician. He has not touched even my pulse. So this is very important, one should try to know, and there is no need of being very critical about it. You have to look to the idea of predominance of the 3 doshas. All 3 doshas are present in every cell of the body, in everybody's body. So nobody is pure Vata, Pitta and Kapha. Everybody is a mixture. Only thing that you need to know is the predominance. Predominantly Vatic, predominantly Kapha, predominantly Pitic. And then, while looking to the morbid factor, morbidity, we call it dosha. Ayurveda talks of dosha, dosha. It is not only the three doshas which are important. The dushya, 7 dushyas, rasa, rakta, they are also important. So there is a need of knowing the dosha, dushya, srotas, ojabal, agnibal, ama status, all these our physician must know, and there is no need of worrying about the name of the disease. Ayurveda says, Charak particularly says, that there is no need of knowing the name of a disease. If you cannot name the disease of a patient before you, don't feel ashamed, Charak says. Don't bother about the name of the disease, because you have to know the process of the disease, how the disease came. That is called samprapti. And we treat the samprapti, reverse the samprapti, reversal samprapti. That has to be done. So the naming of the disease is not condemned, but has not been entertained in Ayurveda. And as I told in the beginning also, the protocols should be simple, easy to handle, with clarity of vision and goal. Don't make a bunch of things and load your student who cannot do it. Many times they write false data. Not uncommon. Because you load them with such things that they cannot do. Now, before I proceed further, I believe personally that there are 3 very important features of Ayurveda. Basically, if somebody asks me, what is the difference between modern medicine and Ayurvedic medicine? I usually say, Ayurveda is pro-nature. Whatever Ayurveda does as per the tune of the nature. We don't do anything against the nature. Modern medicine does everything against nature. In Ayurveda, Ayurveda says that if somebody has diarrhea, don't stop the diarrhea immediately. Wait a day or 2. Maybe he will be relieved automatically, or if it is excess, you manage. But don't jump on suppressing the diarrhea, because diarrhea may be a way of healing of the patient by the nature. Nature wants him to purge, to throw out the toxins. Number 1. Similarly, Ayurveda says that if there is fever, if there is a fever, patient fever, don't stop the fever immediately. Wait for 7 days. Let him run fever for 7 days. And maybe in 7 days he will cure himself, because nature is already curing. The first healer of human being is the nature. The moment you are sick, nature starts helping you. So maybe the fever is the process of that. So don't stop the fever. Maybe within 7 days the patient's fever will disappear automatically without treatment, or even if it persists and goes later, it will leave an immunity against this disease in future, and there will be no such fever again. I give you the example, my own example. When I was a child, 5 years old child, I suffered from typhoid fever. There were not many antibiotics in those days. Few Ayurvedic drugs were given and all that. I continued the fever for 1 month, gradually recovered, and my physician told me that you will never get typhoid in future. Why? Because your body had developed immunity against typhoid fever. There will be no fever. So this is called pro-nature approach of Ayurveda, and this has to be honored. This is not unscientific. This is very, very scientific. If I say this before the scientists, they say they agree to this to a great extent. Holistic approach. Ayurveda does not give only medicines. Ayurveda plans the lifestyle, plans the diet, also gives some medicines. It's a whole approach. And whole body and mind system is treated. Body, mind, spirit, whole thing is treated. And therefore, Ayurveda is a real holistic science, whereas the modern medicine is a completely reductionistic system. They reduce everything in small pieces, and they treat with small pieces. Here I want to add, we have been blaming allopaths that they are reductionistic, and they say that you are abusing me. One of the doctors told me that you are abusing me. I said, no, but you are abusing. This is a kind of abuse to us. He told me, and later I thought more seriously than him, that probably science is not reductionistic. Science is holistic. Science and technology are two different things. Science is holistic. Science is the study of whole nature. It cannot be reductionistic. What is reductionist then? Technology is reductionistic. When you study science with technology, technology reduces the whole thing into a small piece, a small window, and tries to understand it. It's only a reduction of reality. So don't say that science is reductionistic. Science cannot be reductionist. It's holistic as Ayurveda, maybe more holistic than Ayurveda. But technology that people use is reductionistic, really reductionistic, really critically reductionistic, and they should also try, whenever I go to anybody, I say, why don't you talk of some holistic methodology for your science? If science is holistic, your methodology had to be holistic. Why it is so reductionistic? And then they say it is very difficult to develop a holistic technology for science. We have limitations. They have limitations, we don't have limitations that way. And the last one, personalized, is equally important. Personalized, Ayurveda is a personalized system of medicine. Every individual patient is unique. No two patients are similar. No two individuals are similar. Even twin brothers are not similar, they are different. Each individual has a unique genome. They say genome. Modern medicine says, modern science says genome. Every individual has his own genome, so nobody is similar. Ayurveda says that every individual has his own prakriti, and therefore no two persons are similar. Roughly speaking, I would like to say that our prakriti concept denotes genome. What they call genome, we called prakriti. Similarly, correlation which looks to me. So Ayurveda is pro-nature, holistic, personalized, and we have to honor. If you project these three ideas to anybody, science or unscience, people agree with this. This is okay, this is not wrong, there is no unscientific in this. Now, what actually we do? I was talking to principles and approaches till now. I'll take you a little more time. What actually has been said in Ayurveda? When I compare exactly what Ayurveda has said and what modern medicine is doing, I find a lot of similarities. Ayurveda, number one, Ayurveda emphasizes on twofold approach of clinical medicine. Roga Pariksha, Rogi Pariksha. I hope Saurip also talks of similar. Roga Pariksha, Rogi Pariksha. Examine the Rogi, examine the individual irrespective of disease, and then examine the disease separately. Now, Ayurveda is the only science, medical science, which separates disease from the patient. Why? Because when the patient comes to me as a physician, he is not just a bundle of disease. It's much more than that. Firstly, he's a living being. In spite of being sick, he is still living. In spite of being sick and unhealthy, lot of health has remained behind. I call it remainder health. Our sister swasthya, he has some health. And the physician should try to assess the health of the patient. Nobody does. The allopathy, they are worried about disease. But here is a science which says, no, in every patient, examine the disease, no doubt, but also try to assess the quantum health left behind in spite of illness. There is a methodology for this. This idea is a unique idea, very important idea. Probably if allopathic doctors adopt this, their system will also improve. So this is called Roga Rogi Pariksha, the twofold approach of clinical examination. Secondly, what we do in a Rogi Pariksha, I will come to this later. There are 10 methods of examining the individual, irrespective of disease. Keep the disease away. How we do to examine the individual who is suffering from disease. There are 10 methods, I will come to this later. And then examine the roga, this roga or vikriti, nature of pathology. There are other methods for this, we do it. And then what is most important to emphasize here is the tools of diagnosis, what actually we do for roga and rogi pariksha. Roga and rogi pariksha is the objective, you want to do these two, but how do you do? We do by Sarabhita pariksha. Charak, Susud both talk of Sarabhita pariksha. 6 methods of examination of a patient. When the physically patient is before you, you do 6 things in Ayurveda. Number 1 is Prashna pariksha. What is Prashna pariksha? Interrogate the patient, ask questions after questions, and those many questions give you a lot of information. Prashna pariksha. And then Panchendriya pariksha, when physician examines his patient by using his all 5 senses. Seeing, touching, hearing, all those senses. We have 5 senses, we use all our 5 senses to physically examine our patient. So Prashna pariksha, Panchendriya pariksha, this becomes 6, Sarabhita pariksha. Now if you look to the contemporary medicine, what actually they do, what actually modern doctors do, they also do the same thing, exactly the same thing. They also interrogate the patient, take the history, and they physically examine the patient. They have not been able to discover the 7th method till now, during last so many 100 years. And therefore, methodology originally is the same which Charak and Susud evolved, is being used. Is another thing that for the purpose of doing Panchendriya pariksha, somebody may use microscope, somebody may use stethoscope to help their indriyas to do better. Some technology have been added. The principle is the same. Suppose a doctor is blind, how can he use the microscope? If he is deaf, how can he use the stethoscope? So method is the same, only technology has been added to this. Okay, with technology is always welcome, but I am emphasizing to a great extent that the whole diagnosis is the same which Charak did in his own time. Same thing in principles. Technology has grown in any field everywhere. Now a little more going ahead, components of Ayurvedic diagnosis. Many things I have already said. Twofold methodology, Rogi Roga Pariksha, by now you have understood. Clinical methodology, Prashna Pariksha and Panchendriya Pariksha, I have already explained. And then what are the components of clinical examination? When we are doing Prashna Pariksha or Panchendriya Pariksha, what actually do? In between their 3 lines will briefly give you the 10-fold examination of patient for the constitution, prakriti and health. 10 methods. I will come to this next 10 methods. Then 8-fold general examination of the disease, nadi, mutram, balam, jiva, other things. And then 13 channels. Our body has many channels, but there are 13 major channels that is examined for systemic examination. And after doing this, what we do? We construct the samprapti. In modern medicine or any system, when you examine the patient, ultimately, what do? You have heard the patient, you have touched the patient, you have seen the patient, and then what do? You construct the diagnosis. They say, मैं diagnosis बना रहा हूँ. Diagnosis is always made, is not seen. You are not seeing what is the disease going on in the body. You construct, imagine, and the same thing we call as samprapti. We construct the samprapti. Samprapti is what is the dosha involved, what is the dusha involved, what is the adhisthana of the disease, what is the agni status. All those things we write on the prescription that this is the diagnosis. Diagnosis is not in the name of only a name. This is Kamala, okay, maybe Kamala 1, but not all. And then according to Samprapti, we plan the treatment. We call it Kriya Sutra. Kriya Sutra is the principle or line of action that we decide in tune with the Samprapti. Well, these are the 10 methods of Rogi Pariksha. Rogi is the patient, irrespective of the disease. Remember, when I say Rogi, it is irrespective of the disease. 10. Prakriti, Vikriti, Sar, Shamhanan, Praman, Shatva, Shatma, Ahara Shakti, Vyayam Shakti, Vaya or Vaikarana. In every patient, these are to be known, are to be recorded. But out of these 10, which is known as Dasavid Pariksha, this is again from Charak, Dasavid Pariksha at 10 point. But out of these 10, Prakriti is important. This was the style of writing the book. They start with Prakriti here. When we go to Vikriti examination, they start with Nadi. That means Nadi is important. What is important will be written earlier. So these 10, Prakriti, I said few things. Remember that Ayurvedic Prakriti, which is decided in terms of the Dosh theory, is actually the sum total of physique, physiology and psychology. It is not only genes. A lot of scientists are trying to search gene which may be responsible for this kind of Prakriti. That they will not succeed, I am sure. Because Ayurveda talks of a constitution of an individual, how the person looks, how he functions and how he behaves. All put together is the Prakriti. So whenever you are deciding Prakriti, do all three. Don't look only that somebody is strong looking fish, bulky, so he is kapha. No. You look to his mind, look to his body and how he functions. And psychology also. There may be somebody who is very intelligent, very sharp, very aggressive, very dynamic. This is a feature, this is Prakriti. Somebody may be slow, not so intelligent, not so dynamic. He is different. So all these things are determined, and on this basis we try to know the range of proportion of the three doshas. Prakriti again is a mixture. So we try to know the range of proportion of the three doshas. Remember this is very important. Range of proportion. Don't look for pure kind of thing. Range of proportion of the three doshas, which reflects into the physique, physiology and psychology of an individual. This is how we do Prakriti. And Vikriti is common. Sara. Now, in addition to Prakriti, they have described 7 Sara. In fact, 8 Sara. Sara means quality. Probably my teacher taught me that when they talk of Sar here, they are looking for the Prakriti of the each dhatu, nature of the each individual dhatu. Somebody may made good for muscle system, somebody is made good for circulation system, something like this. So the Sar is the qualitative imagination of the dhatus. Shanghanan, total body build, how the body is built. Some people are so built that they look beautiful. The proportion of different body parts are uniform, balanced. They look strong, they look handsome, beautiful, and they have high immunity. This is what Ayurveda says. So Shanghanan is important. We just say rate, pravar, avar, madhyam. I hope you understand. Pravar, avar, madhyam. Pravar, avar, madhyam. Pravar means superior. Madhyam means medium. Avar means inferior, like this. There is no method of measuring it. We just label our patients like this, Shanghanan. Pramana. They were not satisfied only with Shanghanan. They also suggested measure certain body parts. Mathematically also. That was easy to do, therefore they have said Pramana. Sattva, mental stamina. There are some people who are Pravar Sattva, Avar Sattva, Madhyam Sattva. Pravar Sattva is one, I have experience of treating a lot of patients with arthritis. There are some patients who have very severe arthritis, must be a lot of pain also, but they don't complain so much because they are pravarashitva. They sustain the pain. There can be another patient who has not so severe disease, still he goes on crying, pain, pain and pain. And the doctor goes on giving painkillers and painkillers. He is doing more harm than service. So it is very necessary to know the pravar, our madhyam, shattva for the patient. If you know that, you can manage your patient much better. Shattva, satmya, adaptability. How efficiently you adapt to the situations, whether it's environmental or social. Some people are very, very restless during summers because they cannot adapt to some hot season. Some people are very bad during winters, they cannot sustain it. They have poor satmya. And if I know as a physician that my patient is our satmya, I will take care of it. Or for example, in case of sattva, if I know that my patient is our sattva, therefore he is crying for pain, I will not give him so much of painkillers. I will give more tranquilizers like things, medhya rashayana. That will help him and will not do any harm. Ahara Shakti. If the patient is sick, it is necessary to maintain the nutrition also. But how much he can eat and how much he can digest. Abhyavarana Shakti and Jarana Shakti. There are two kinds of fractions in Ahara Shakti. A physician must know that my patient can eat this much, can digest, so that we don't overdoing in feeding the patient. That information is needed. Vyayam Shakti. Exercise, mild exercise is also absolutely necessary during the treatment. Even the patient is hospitalized, sometimes even if they are in ICU, there is a need of some degree of exercise. If you know that your patient has good exercise endurance, probably you treat, give little exercise, recovery is faster. Therefore, these things are absolutely necessary for a physician to know all these. And then Vaya and Vaikarana. This is again very important. This refers to aging process. Disease is something and aging is something. I have a patient who is only 40 years and he comes to me very frequently, and when I look to him, it looks like a person of 70 years. Why? Because the rate of aging in him is faster. There could be another person who is 70 years, still looks to be of 50 years, because his aging process is slow. So it is necessary for a physician to know what is the rate of aging in his patient. And if he knows, he manages aging also along with the disease. This is why they have included Vaya in this scheme. So these are the 10-fold examination of the patient irrespective of disease. We are not talking of disease, we are talking of the person who is suffering from a disease. And these 8, Nadi Mutram Malam Jiva Shabdasparpudgakatihi Roga Kranta Sarirasya Sthanani Asthani Parikshayet. This is a statement of Jogratnakar, which was written in medieval period. It is not a classic like Charak. But this is very, very popular. And probably this is the first place where Nadi has been described clearly. And we do all these to know the disease state. This is not for Prakriti. Many people try to examine the Prakriti by knowing the Nadi. Nadi is very, very fast changing. What you see in the Nadi may change fast. And to decide Prakriti on the basis of Nadi, usually I don't believe in it. So Nadi, out of all this is too long to complete because I am crossing my time. Nadi is important. Out of these 8, Nadi is important, therefore it has first place, Nadi. What is Nadi? The word Nadi means a tubular structure, and the dynamism of this tubular structure is measured at the root of the thumb here and is the nadi. It gives an index or a kind of feeling what is happening inside the system, particularly linked to the heart. This nadi, according to the today's understanding, nadi is nothing but a reflection of the heart. But this reflection varies in terms of doshas, and those things have been described very, very precisely in Ayurveda, and we use the description that is there is briefly I have made a kind of approximate depiction how nadi may vary. Now there are many, many physicians in India, and maybe more than India. Maybe if you go to America, there also you will find some physicians who see nadi in a very mysterious manner. There was a time when many, many physicians made it a mystic. There is no need of it is no need of sending our students to be mystics of nadi. Make it more objective. What I say, the vat, pit and kapha. Even what happened when nadi started, people started learning nadi, it was learned by lay persons. Laypersons when looked at this place, root of the thumb here, examining something, in their mind the idea came, what is happening here? There is something moving. The first feeling was that there is something moving. Later they found that in some people it is moving faster, in some slower, and in some irregular. Okay? Later they found that it has a lot of jumping in some, in others it is not jumping so much. And then the same layman, I am not talking of physicians, layman, when palpated, it found that in some it seemed that he is palpating an artery full of blood. In some he is palpating the artery which looks to be empty, and some may be in between. Now this difference came. Gradually this was discovered by lay people in the society. Anybody has this movement, anybody, all of us can do this. From this the science of pulse came into science. Later many things were discovered in medicine by lay people. Do you know who discovered kidney, that it forms urine? It was discovered in a butcher's place, when the butchers who kill the animals for selling meat, they discovered that kidney organ, this red organ, is something which smells like urine, and they thought that this is the organ probably related to urine. Not doctors, no anatomists. This was discovered by butchers. So this is how nadi also came in science, like this, and then they started using technical terms like rate, rhythm, volume, and what else, such things. Technical terms were used. Now when I look to this information, to me it looks that the rate of the pulse increases with vata. Vata has the feature of gati. It is responsible for speed. So anybody's pulse is very rapid, low volume, low amplitude is vatik, and Ayurveda uses the word sarpagati, sarpati nadi. When the nadi is crawling pulse, you know, I hope you have seen how the snake crawls. It does not jump, it crawls. This kind of thin volume, rapid pulse, which is often seen in very, very agile, anxious persons, is vatik nadi, sarpagati nadi. And then in some, the rate of jumping amplitude is very high, and that is probably because of pitta. Pitta has a force, pitta has a strong force. Air is mobile, floats. But if you burn a flame here, the flame goes straight up, more stronger than air. And kapha kind of pulse probably is one which is slow, relatively slow, not very slow, but relatively slow. It has a good volume. You will feel that the artery which I am palpating is full of blood. This marker could be Kaphas Nadi. I have just depicted a recording. We also did recording in some patients also, but this is artificial one. You can see the pattern. Is visible last column of this slide? Vatik, Patik, Kaphas, Sarpagati, Mandukagati, and Hamshagati. Sarpagati is crawling pulse, Mandukagati jumping pulse. Manduk is frog. If there is a frog here, if this frog wants to reach you, sir, it will jump to go there. It will not walk. It has legs, but it doesn't walk. It jumps. And Hamsha is very tranquil, very happy, slowly walking bird, Hamsha, tranquility. So they gave this simile which is very, very interesting. I like this way of saying Sarpagati, Mandukagati, Hamsagati. And maybe probably today's physicians can use this kind of picture. When I described this before one of my teachers many, many years ago, he told me, don't talk of rate rhythm volume, talk of Vat Pitta Kapha. Vat Pitta Kapha, don't talk of rate rhythm volume, because the doctors are using. If the doctors are using something, why cannot use? And then he told me that you only talk of Vat Pitta Kapha and talk Sarvagati, Mandukagati, and Hamsagati. Don't talk of these things. I agreed with him. I cannot deny because he was my teacher. I agreed, but I still believe what I thought, because I want to be more practical, not dogmatic. What is happening here? Okay, I am right. Now I will not go into details of these 13 points. I said our body has innumerable channels. Sroto mayam is hariram. But out of that, 13 are important. अच्छा ठीक है 5 मिनट बंद करते हैं. I'm sorry I took a lot of time. Okay, so these 13 channels, these सब यहाँ हैं? नहीं, in his office. Okay. 13 channels. Out of these 13 channels, there are 3 which are meant for input. Pranava, Jalavah, and Udakbha. Pranava, Udakbha, and which one? Anava. Anava, Pranava, Udakbha. आप बाहर से क्या लेते हैं? जल लेते हैं, खाना लेते हैं, पानी लेते हैं. इनके लिए 3 चैनल हैं. There are 3 channels for output. They are Purishabha, Mutrabha, and Shvedabha. These are the 3 principal things that we throw out. And there are 7 for 7 dhatus, to conserve 7 dhatus. These are 7. And these 7 are to be examined. They have also described 8 factors in our mind. I will leave it for you to read later. Mana, Buddhi, Sangya, Gyan, Smriti, Bhakti, Seal, Chesta, Achar. These are mental state examination. Okay, I think I have finished everything. This last one. This one should remember, Jnana Buddhi Pradipena Jona Vishati Tattvit. Aturasya Antaratmanam na sas rogan sikishati. A physician who cannot enter into the antaratma of his patient, he cannot treat a patient. This shows the intense doctor-patient rapport, according to Ayurveda. And Vikaranama Kusalo, here he is saying there is no need of being ashamed if you cannot name a disease. Naming a disease is not important. Nahi sar vikaranam namtos dhyavastati. It's not possible to name every disease. Abhishek Darbyan Upastata Arogi Pada Chatustam, I already said. Okay, okay, I will go to the end. Okay. This has some problem. Summary mein kar do. Last slide. Okay. I had few more slides to show, but I will stop here because many things that I wanted to say I have said. I like to say that Ayurveda is a holistic science of life, health care and cure based on critically observed subjective factors which form the basic metrics of healthcare. There is a need of developing rating scales and biomarkers essential for factors like Agni, Am, Ojas, Ojabal and integrity of Srota system. Besides, we need markers for the doshas and the dosha prakritis through intense interface between Ayurveda and modern biomedical sciences. This kind of approach can help us decode Ayurveda, and I believe that if it is done, this will recode modern medicine also. Modern medicine will have also to change. They say that we want to decode Ayurveda. Well, you decode, we don't mind. But if you really do this, modern science will have to be recoded. Many things that they say has to change. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Singh. So we are a little bit late, so can we move on to the next session, which will be like felicitation of Professor Ramharsh Singh ji and the Honorable Vice Chancellor, Registrar, and the heads of department of faculties departments will be coming here shortly. So everyone is waiting outside. So we'll just, without any break, we'll continue the program.